English 121, Day 8. Strong Response Writing. From the Allen and Bacon Guide, pages 104 to 114 and 118 to 123. Response writing differs from summary writing in that you are no longer reading closely, with the grain, to understand the meaning of a text, but instead reading critically, against the grain, to analyze how and how well a text is constructed. With the grain versus against the grain. Think of strong response writing like a conversation, in which you identify and probe points by examining how a piece is written, and then speak back to the article by doing your own critical thinking and asserting your own responses and ideas. There are three main types of strong response: rhetorical critique, ideas critique, and reflection. But most writing tends to be a blend of all three kinds. The first is rhetorical critique. This analyzes a text's rhetorical strategies and evaluates how effectively the author achieves his or her purpose with the intended audience. Rhetorical critique points out both the strengths and weaknesses of how a text is constructed, what rhetorical strategies it employs, and how effectively it supports its argument. Ask yourself, who is the intended audience and what is the writer's purpose? How well does the text suit its particular audience and purpose? Think about how the genre of the piece has affected the author's style, structure, and use of evidence. Ask yourself, how do the author's tone and language choices impact the overall effect of the text? Consider how well the author has created a reasonable, logically structured argument based on reputable, relevant, and sufficient evidence. Ask, how well does the author persuade readers that he or she is reliable and trustworthy? When conducting a rhetorical critique, include a thesis of your own that captures your overall assessment of the text and maps out the specific points that you will develop in the analysis. Find a few rhetorical points that you are particularly interested in discussing. Make insightful observations that are supported with examples and short quotes from the text. The next type of response writing is ideas critique. With ideas critique, you examine how the ideas of the original author mesh or conflict with your own. To what extent do you agree or disagree with the writer's thesis? You'll speak back to the text from your own experience, background, and beliefs so as to join an important conversation about the actual subject matter of the text. Ask, where do I agree with this author? What new insights has this text given me? Where do I disagree with this author? What important points has the author overlooked? What new questions has the text raised in my mind? And what are the potential consequences of this text? What are the limitations to those consequences? When writing an ideas critique, if you are reading mostly with the grain of a text, be sure to supply additional evidence or extend the argument, perhaps applying it to a new context, so that you aren't merely summarizing the author's original argument. If you are reading mostly against the grain of a text, challenge the writer's ideas, point out flaws and holes in the writer's thinking, and provide counterexamples and rebuttals, but be sure to be fair and accurate in your criticisms. The next type of response writing is reflection. Reflection provides a discussion of how a text has affected you personally, what memories it has triggered, what personal experience it relates to, what values and beliefs it challenges, what dilemmas it poses, etc. This is a more open-ended form than the other two types of response writing, and we will be dealing with it less in this class. Ask, what personal memories or experience does the text trigger? What personal values or beliefs does the text reinforce or challenge? What questions, dilemmas, or problems does this text raise? What new insights, ideas, or thoughts of your own have been stimulated by this text? Finally, you can also conduct responses to visual text. These kinds of responses examine many of the same features identified for a verbal text, for example, rhetorical and ideas critiques. Consider analyzing visual features as well, however, particularly compositional elements and other genre choices as they affect the author's construction of the piece. Ask, how has the author used type, layout, color, and image? How do these features affect the rhetorical impact of the document? How do these features affect the intended audience? Also ask what the relationship is between the images and verbal texts in the document. How much rhetorical work is performed by the visual images in the text? And then, how effectively do the images convey or support the author's main points? How convincing are the visual images? Does the whole argument seem credible? Let's explore some ideas for writing a response. There are several strategies you can employ. First, read the text closely, with the grain, listening to the text well so that you can then write an accurate and objective summary of its argument. Include this summary near the beginning of the response after a brief introduction of the issue at hand. A strong response should blend all types of response writing, focusing on rhetorical and ideas critiques for formal writing and reflective writing for less formal personal writing. Decide whether your response will be mostly with the grain, supporting and agreeing with the original author's points, or against the grain, challenging and disputing the author's original argument. And then immediately following your summary of the text, include a thesis of your own that states the points you want to make about the original author's rhetorical choices and/or his ideas. Also focus on a small group of points that enable you to bring readers to a new, enlarged, or deepened understanding of the text. Compose the majority of your response with a discussion of the several points you identified in your thesis, in the same order as they were first introduced. If you are reading mostly with the grain of a text, be sure to extend and apply the ideas in a new way to avoid mere summary. And if you are reading against the grain of a text, focus both on the author's rhetorical shortcomings as well as where you personally disagree with his or her ideas. Good response writing begins with reading in a particular way. You must be an active and critical reader in order to respond to a text effectively. This means taking notes. Don't let your immediate reactions of a text pass you by. Also identify hot spots in the text. These are places where you find yourself reacting passionately. Be sure to take the time to free write on those ideas. Ask questions of the text. Identify questions that the text forced you to think about. And articulate your differences from the writer's intended audience. Decide who that audience is and use that to evaluate the author's choices. The first step in writing your response is to write a thesis. Your thesis should state whether you mostly agree or disagree with the chosen text, and then several points to support why you feel that way. Your thesis should map out the points that you want to develop and discuss. It should surprise your readers with something new or challenging, and your points should be contestable and developed in later paragraphs in order. From there, you can move on to shaping and drafting the body of your response. Most strong response essays call for a short, contextualized introduction to set up your analysis. Also include a short summary of the article near the beginning of your response that gives the readers an idea of the article or text before they get your reaction. Then move from the summary into your thesis, which will map out the 2 or more points that you will be explaining and developing in the body of your essay. Readers will expect the points to follow in the same order in the body of the response that they are presented in the thesis. Each point in your response should call for a lively discussion, combining general statements and specifics that will encourage readers to see the text in your way. Also offer a short conclusion that recaps the thesis and offers just enough commentary to bring the discussion to a close. Finally, use attributive tags, quotation marks, and be sure to document all of your ideas in an MLA-accurate works cited page. These strategies will help you be successful with your strong response writing.